Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and this time we are going to be focused on talking about how this epic triple Nintendo Direct rumor has just gotten more likely when you consider all of the events that have transpired over the course of this week. It's looking like the coming weeks are going to be a very exciting time for Nintendo fans when it comes to this possibility of us getting 3 exciting Nintendo Directs beyond what's already happened, and I'll even say there may be even a possibility of more. But before getting into all of that, let me point out I have just noticed that only 34.4% of my watch time is coming from subscribers. 65.6% is coming from people who are not subscribed. So, I would really appreciate it if you would consider subscribing. If you watch my videos, if you enjoy my news videos, my theory videos, my rumor videos like this one, your subscription would be greatly appreciated, and I'll put out a little challenge. If this video nets me over 100 subscribers by the time we put out the next video, which would likely be sometime tomorrow or Sunday, then I'll do something funny. I'll put together some sort of weird, embarrassing dance, or I'll share another picture of my beautiful cat, Ruby. You guys let me know what you would prefer to see in the comments below. But back to the focus of this video. So, there's a rumor that we talked about a little while back that there are going to be 3 Nintendo Directs that I think are going to be pretty epic, and I believe most people would agree. So, the idea is, going into September, given that it's Mario's 40th anniversary, there will be a Mario Bros. 40th anniversary event, a Direct, telling us more about the movie, probably our first look at the movie, some more Universal Park news, and an announcement of a Mario 40th anniversary game. But that's just part of the rumor. There's also supposed to be a bigger Direct where we'll be getting news on Metroid Prime 4 and a variety of release date announcements and such for so many different third-party things that should be happening relatively soon. But also during this Direct, apparently, they would be announcing also a Metroid Prime 4 Direct to happen a little bit later. And so that's the rumor. But this rumor is coming from Nash Weedle. Now, I understand some people share skepticism about Nash Weedle, but what's interesting, one of the reasons why this rumor has become more likely, is because Nash Weedle has gotten another thing correct during this week. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle was confirmed to be coming to Nintendo Switch 2, but Nash Weedle was the first to talk about Indiana Jones coming to Switch 2 back on June 1st, before the Switch 2 even came out. And this is just one more thing that Nash Weedle's gotten right throughout this year. I've been putting together this little document showing different things Nash Weedle's gotten correct, things that he was talking about before anyone else, like the whole idea of there being Switch 2 editions, a tarnished edition of Elden Ring, a free Switch 2 edition of No Man's Sky, mouse controls in Metroid Prime 4, 3D Donkey Kong instead of 3D Mario, the Direct, the partner that happened on July 31st, and now Indiana Jones. There are some others, but these are perhaps the ones that are most worthy of note and most obviously things that he himself talked about happening before anyone else on the internet. And I've pointed this out before, but friend of the channel Attack the Backlog has actually corroborated a little bit of this information of this rumor, because he's also said he has heard there would be 2 Directs in September, as Nash Weedle has suggested with the Mario Anniversary Direct and then the General Direct, we assume a General Direct, given what's supposed to be in there, different third-party things and Prime 4. And for those that don't know, Attack the Backlog was pretty accurate about the partner showcase. He had even scheduled his live stream for that partner showcase a week in advance because he was that confident on exactly when it was happening. Also, he had teased The Adventures of Elliot, perhaps one of the most exciting announcements during the presentation. So Attack the Backlog sourcing seems to be pretty strong, and he's corroborating the information provided to us by Nash Weedle regarding this triple Nintendo Direct rumor. But it's not just Nash Weedle getting one more thing right that has made this series of Nintendo Directs rumor more likely. There's actually a lot more to it. So something else that happened this week is the Kirby Air Riders Nintendo Direct. And there are actually 2 aspects of this Nintendo Direct that make this triple Nintendo Direct rumor a lot more likely. I will mention though, since we are on the note of Kirby Air Riders, they did just confirm on the official Kirby Air Riders Twitter page that the game will have split screen. So if there's any concern that's going to be in the game, that's another reason to think this game is going to have more things to do, more things to enjoy, and we'll likely be learning more in the coming weeks, and then perhaps a General Direct in September. But one of the aspects of this Air Riders Direct that has made this rumor more likely is the fact that during this Direct, they confirmed that Kirby Air Riders is coming out on November 20th, right before Black Friday. So this is kind of a big deal, because when people heard about the Air Riders Direct in that one short day before it actually aired after it was announced, people were thinking that this game, Kirby Air Riders, would be the September release, because why else would they put out the Direct here in August? And that's not the case. The game is coming out late November. And what it actually highlights here is that September is still totally vacant. September is a big release month throughout most Nintendo years, and you would think during the launch year Switch 2, that would be even more reason for them to put out a substantial release in the month of September. And we look throughout the months that Switch 2 has been out, and Nintendo's been making sure to put out more than one thing per month. However, in this month of August, while it is more than one thing, the things aren't so substantial. A very small budget $20 eShop title, and then a Switch 2 edition of Kirby and the Forgotten Land, a game that came out already a few years ago. This is not a new game like Prime 4 or Legend ZA. So this month of August, in comparison to July, where we got Donkey Kong Bonanza and Mario Party Jamboree plus TV set, and then in June, the launch year Switch 2, where we got Welcome Tour, Breath and Tears Switch 2 editions, all the GameCube Classic announcements, and of course Mario Kart World, there is a substantial difference here in terms of the amount of push Nintendo's putting in the month of August. So it's more reason to think that they wouldn't go into September with absolutely nothing. But I'm recording this on August 22nd and nothing has been announced, so what's going to happen? Well, part of the rumor is that there would be a Mario 40th Anniversary presentation. And when we go back to the prior Mario Anniversary Direct back in 2020, this Direct happened on September 3rd, and the closing announcement of the show was Super Mario 3D All-Stars, which came out just 2 weeks later on September 18th. And so the idea would be that this Mario Anniversary Direct would happen in the beginning of the month of September, and then a couple weeks later, we'd be getting whatever they are going to announce at the end of this presentation. So then there would be a substantial release in the month of September, which I think is hinted at by the fact that Kirby was not announced for a September release. There's still a need for a September release. Now, what is that surprise title? There's a rumor of there being a remaster of Mario Galaxy 2. That's what I think it is. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think it might be an ambitious one. We'll see what actually happens, of course. And I'll also throw out the idea that maybe they will shadow drop the game on the eShop. They'll come out with a physical version a little bit later, and there might still be room for another shadow drop later into the year when there's a general Direct. But another aspect, because I said there would be two, about this Air Riders Direct that suggests this rumor is actually more likely, is that this Kirby Air Riders Direct is another game-specific Nintendo Direct. Now, if you've been following the channel throughout the year, you may have noticed that I've been theorizing since early on in the year that this year would have an increased amount of game-specific Directs because this is the launch year of Nintendo Switch 2, and they may be doing something very similar to what they did back in 2017, the launch year Switch 1, where they had an increased amount, an increased frequency of game-specific Directs. There was a Splatoon 2 Direct, there was a Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Direct, there was the ARMS Direct, there was a Fire Emblem Direct, there was an Animal Crossing Mobile Direct. This year so far, we've gone the Mario Kart World Direct, then we got the Donkey Kong Bonanza Direct, and now we've just gone the Kirby Air Riders Direct. I think there will be more, and we have a rumor of a Metroid Prime 4 Direct, and to be honest, if Nintendo's willing to give us a Direct for Kirby Air Riders, as hyped as I am for the game, Kirby Air Riders I don't think is a game that needs to be marketed as much as, say, Metroid Prime 4, which we've heard, and seems pretty realistic to think, has been one of the most expensive titles Nintendo has ever made. So I definitely think there's even more reason to think that Nintendo's going to do something for Metroid Prime 4 here. And something else I'll throw out, we've gotten a Pokemon Presents where they talk about Legend ZA as well. In other words, there's been some sort of special presentation outside of a general for a lot of the major releases this year. Would Metroid Prime 4 Beyond really be the only major release this year that Nintendo would not have a special presentation for? That seems pretty unlikely to me, so it's more reason to believe that there will be a Prime 4 Nintendo Direct, which is part of this triple Direct rumor. But some people might counter by saying, well, Nintendo's not talking about Prime 4, this game might get delayed. But let me just stress that we are late into August already. They have not announced the release date, sure, but they also have not announced a delay. the later and later we get into the year, the less and less likely it is that they would be announcing a delay of the game. This is something that they would probably get ahead of way in advance, as they've done before with other delays, like in the case of Tears of the Kingdom, for example. They did that way early into the year. This is not the time to be announcing delays. And Nintendo has repeatedly been listing Prime 4 for 2025. They haven't changed that. They continue to put out different things, different promotional material, different events, financial explanatory material, so many things where Prime 4 is still listed as a 2025 release. And we just talked about this yesterday, but we got several different regions that have rated Metroid Prime 4, including the ESRB, which strongly suggests that the game is probably done and about to come out. We've talked about ratings before for this game, we've been getting a few throughout the year, but now there are so many. Even more have popped up since I talked about this yesterday. This game's coming out this year, and with all these ratings now coming out, it strongly suggests that a major announcement needs to happen pretty darn soon. Now, some people might also say, well, it doesn't have to be that soon because Metroid Prime 4 might come out in December even if it's not being delayed past this year. And that is possible, I will admit that. I think December is a possibility for Prime 4 as much as I don't like the idea. But I actually think there's a far more likely period of time that Prime 4 is coming out. And that's late October, early November. Some people might say, oh, well, there's no way they're going to do that because Nintendo would only be putting out one game per month. But people are saying that aren't actually paying attention to how Nintendo handles things. Yes, I think it's a nice rule of thumb for speculation to think maybe we'll get like one major release per month of the year, but that's not exactly how it goes. Most years, the October to November period actually has 3 to 4 Nintendo published titles. So if we're getting Pokemon Legends ZA on October 16th and we're getting Kirby Air Riders more than a month later on November 20th, there is room to have another game in the middle there. And that game, at this point I'm thinking, kind of has to be Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. And if you look throughout the entire Switch era, you'll notice that Nintendo really likes to put out a game, a major game, in either the last week of October or the first week of November. Going back to 2017, we had Mario Odyssey, and then a week before that it was Fire Emblem Warriors, so they don't mind putting out games in quick succession. But then we move over to 2019, because they didn't do it for 2018. But in 2019, for Halloween, they had Luigi's Mansion 3, and a couple weeks before that, it was Ring Fit Adventure, kind of similar to what's happening maybe this year, I would say. And then a couple weeks later was Pokemon Sword and Shield. But then in 2020, they had another Halloween game in Pikmin 3 Deluxe. 2021, another Halloween game in Mario Party Superstars. 2022, another Halloween game or Halloween week game in Bayonetta 3. In 2023, WarioWare Move It came out a couple weeks after Mario Wonder in October in the first week of November. And then in 2024, just last year, Nintendo made sure to put out Mario & Luigi Brothership in that first week of November, just a few weeks after the release of Mario Party Jamboree in October, which falls on October 16th, which is when Legends ZA is coming out this year. So, point is, most years, Nintendo puts out a game, if not in the week of Halloween, the week after for the first week of November, still some time before Black Friday. And when we also account for the fact that the Metroid Prime 1 through 3 visual retrospective art book is coming out October 28th, I think we know what's happening here, everyone. Metroid Prime 4 is most likely coming out, if not in that last week of October, that first week of November. Which is just more reason to think that there does need to be a September Direct with a release date for Prime 4, and probably also a Metroid Prime 4 game-specific Direct a little bit after that, maybe in early October. And yet, we still have even more reason to think that this triple Nintendo Direct rumor is likely going to happen. Because Gamescom has been happening this week, and we've been getting demonstrations for different games, such as Elden Ring and Final Fantasy VII Remake, which, by the way, yesterday we talked about how people were reporting from Gamescom that Elden Ring was running very poorly in handheld mode. Well, there have been other demonstrations, and Elden Ring's been played in docked mode, and actually is playing a lot better. So, really could just be an optimization issue, and by the time it comes out, the game will be running well in both handheld and docked mode. So all the dooming and glooming that Switch 2 can't run third-party games likely already greatly exaggerated, especially because there are already other impressive third-party games that are running well, like Cyberpunk, for example, or Final Fantasy VII Remake, which we've also seen footage for, and it looks to be running pretty well. From what I remember of playing the PS4 version, looks pretty similar. It looks like Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is a good thing. But both of these games, which were announced to be coming out this year back in April for Switch 2, still don't have release dates for them, even though we've just gotten pretty big updates on them with seeing these demonstrations of these games finally running on the console, playable builds. When are we getting these release dates? Likely in a big Nintendo Direct since they've waited this long. And I'll also say, there may be another game that could be getting a release date fairly soon because the official Sea of Thieves account has teased the game coming to Switch 2, with this whole banana reference here to Donkey Kong. And Nash Weedle, who has been continually getting things right, including talking about Sea of Thieves earlier this year coming to the console, and now the official Sea of Thieves account is teasing that, he has said this is supposed to be the first Microsoft title to come to Switch 2. So if the official account's teasing it, we're hearing from Nash Weedle that it's supposed to be the first one to come, maybe it would be announced in a September Direct. Now something else that I think is worth noting is that Zach from Switchforce, friend of the channel, recently has been getting some flack because he had said he had heard about a big Resident Evil update happening at Gamescom. And as it turned out, nothing was actually announced, which is why we refer to these things as rumors. You gotta doubt them because they heard something, there's room for whatever sort of thing to be off in some way. But I don't think this is Zach being off with his sourcing here, just perhaps a misinterpretation of information, because he was basing this off a photo, and this photo has come to light. The photo was 100% accurate. The leak was correct. This image was the leak. Them putting together Switch 2 booths right next to the Resident Evil Requiem booth. But nothing Resident Evil was announced for Switch 2 during the show, so it was simply interpreted from this image that something was going to happen, and that wasn't the case, but the leak of this image was accurate. Anyway, I simply point that out because Zach from Switchforce was correct about the partner showcase a few weeks ago, and has been talking about how there's supposed to be something else happening fairly soon, the next wave, the next phase of Nintendo's plan here. And he's recently been saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the next Direct should be happening soon, sooner than many expect, and on a date you wouldn't think. So what might that mean? I'm not sure, but I'm going to say maybe he's just referring to this idea of a Mario Anniversary Direct happening early on the month of September, which, you know, in most years, an early Direct in September is usually not what happens. We have to wait till mid-September. And maybe it's even possible that this whole rumor of there being triple Directs is a little off, because perhaps the Mario Anniversary Direct and the big September Direct could become one big presentation. That's certainly possible as well. Regardless though, as I've talked about throughout this video, there are a variety of things that have happened throughout this week that still give us plenty of reason to believe this idea of these 3 different big events are going to happen in some way in the not-so-distant future. The presentation of Mario 40th Anniversary announcements, a whole bunch of release dates that need to be said about different third-party games coming out this year, a big update on Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, and perhaps even an announcement of a Metroid Prime 4 Direct to further campaign and push this game so it could be one of the big releases of this holiday season. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.